Welcome to the January Service Dog Handler Chat. Today we're talking all about plans and how you can use plans to help set your dog up for success. And we're going to go over, some general terminology in plans, such as what the difference between short-term and long-term goals. We're also going to talk about a lot of different types of plans. So joining us today, we have a special guest, Renee Smith. And Renee does a podcast of her own that I absolutely love. So if you haven't checked it out yet, search for A Dog's Life with No Spoon or Dog Life with No Spoons. That's it. There's no in there. Great, excellent podcast. And so with that, Renee, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself a little bit more.
Excellent. Hi, hello. I'm glad you like the podcast. We also like it very much too. I'm a behavior consultant. I'm a veteran, neurodivergent human. I've got 2 toddlers and 7 dogs, so I dog really hard. I started training world thinking I was going to be a service dog trainer, and then life had other plans for me. But I've always kind of kept up with some of the self-service dog training stuff. So, yeah, I do like it. This will be fun.
I think we kind of started out opposites, because I started out with reactive dogs, never thinking I would train with service dogs. And then I needed my own and realized how big of a need there was for affordable trainers that are working with service dogs.
Yeah, for real.
I mean, because yes, trainers deserve way more money than what we get. I won't argue that. But it also has to be affordable, especially when you're looking at the service dog world, because everybody's disabled, at least on a lower income, if not a very limited income.
Yep.
So,
yeah,
just not everybody, but the majority of people are.
Yeah, that's fair. No, when I retired out of the Army, I was medically retired early 20s. So, like, what do you do as an early 20-year-old that is suddenly disabled?
Yeah.
Start training dogs is what I opted for.
Yep. And mine hit kind of when I was early 30s, but I was able to get some help, get some treatment, and deal with it for another 20 years before it actually took hold so much that I needed the service dog.
That makes sense.
I have a puppy kind of chewing on my belly at the moment. She's sitting beside me, but so yeah, if I seem distracted, migraine day, and Belle is just 3.5 months old right now. So that also means I could disappear on the drop of the hat to run her out to potty, which is only a few feet away. So I can still hear what's going on. But
Fair.
out right by my door, about 10 feet away. So
Nice. Good heads up.
yeah. So if we kind of look at plans in general and just overall plans, we know one of the hardest things for people to do, well, there's 2 that I find, and you may find additional things, but the 2 main things that I see that stop people from using plans is A, creating them, and B, following through. Not necessarily doing the work, but following through with the documenting of the work, or keeping the plan up to date. That type of thing. I know those are my biggest struggles, and for many of my clients. So and I've had lots of chats already about my love for spreadsheets. Totally love spreadsheets. And when Azul was a puppy, I created one. I looked for a really good socialization checklist, and one just didn't really apply to my rural environment and all that my dogs face.
Yeah.
So I created my own and merged probably like 4 others together. And I loved it when Azul was a puppy. And now I have another puppy, right? She is 3.5 months old, and I tried to use the exact same one I used for Azul, and I don't like it anymore.
No.
I still love the spreadsheet format per se, but I'm a different me than I was 4 years ago when Azul was a puppy. And Bella's a different dog. So and our environment is pretty much the same. But back then, my role in the environment locally was a lot different because I didn't have a dog training center. I didn't have a second place away from home to train. Just the whole day-to-day life was much different 4 years ago versus now. So that has really hindered my plan and the way I plan. So, and I know we'll probably talk a little bit more about spreadsheets later as I share some of mine. I do have right on my website the socialization spreadsheet that I was talking about with plans where you can see Azules, you can see Bells, and there's a blank one that you can do yourself. For anybody that does have a puppy that's watching this, it's at
Nice.
uberpaws.com and down the right-hand column, easy to find.
Perfect.
So, Renee, want to tell us a little bit about some of your favorite formats for plans?
Yeah, so my neurospicy brain, I really think I want to do a structured, like I love Excel sheets. I love all of that, but I think it's really important for me and most of my humans to every month reassess and make adjustments. So like actually making purposeful room for variation in the plan, I have found to be really helpful because it kind of takes off the moral weight of being a failure if it's already in the plan. So having that has really, really been helpful for me.
I can see that.
Yeah. The other piece, and it kind of ties off of what you were saying. I like to have, I'm a strong advocate for body doubling, strong advocate for body doubling. So when you're making a list, when you're trying to make a plan, and like I can make lists all day long. I can do a list. Finishing a list is my struggle point. So I body double somebody who's really good at finishing lists, but not great at starting them. And we bounce off of each other. Find somebody that plays to the strength that you need and partner with them. Like we're not expected to live life alone. So I don't know. A lot of my reframes when being disabled are trying to remember that it's okay that I don't have to do it all alone. Like it's totally fine and acceptable and a great idea to build a community and lean on people for the things that you don't necessarily do as well.
That's a really good point. That's kind of where the Crazy2Calm Canine Coaches started as well, because not all the canine coaches, but high percentages are all disabled. And we all have different strengths and different weaknesses. Even if you're not looking at the disability world, humans in general all have different strengths and weaknesses, same as dogs, different strengths. So working together on different things, and like right now we have one person that does most of the website stuff and another person that does most of the Facebook stuff and another person that does, and it's just having it spread out like that just makes it so easy, because if I tried to do everything that we accomplished with the Crazy2Calm Canine Coaches, if I tried to do it all myself, I would need about 6 of me, and I would still probably be working 60 hours a week with 6 of me.
Right. Yeah. The single mom life definitely put me in a headspace of it's just me and only me, and that has not been very helpful. I also found it helpful to remember like the point of a spreadsheet, the point of a plan is to help you get through it. So if you're not getting through it, it's okay to adjust the plan. So like every 3 months, I'll redo my whole list structure because it's just boring and it's not working anymore. And that's also okay.
I like to do that on one of my main, so I do have a lot of different planning spreadsheet formats. And one is specifically like, and I'll use it for the long-term and short-term plans, which we'll describe a little bit more. But so I will have a long-term plan that, improve leash manners might be kind of a generic goal on long-term plan because it's not specific. And then when I'm looking at, all right, but what do I really mean by that now? Then I'm going to define it out a little bit more. And like, because I mean, for the first 2 years of a dog's life, or first 2 years with me, I'm pretty much working on leash manners in every single plan I do. And so by putting it in that long-term plan, it just helps to keep me on task. But it's not if I don't hit the point that I am in this short-term plan by the end of this plan, I can keep that same goal for the next time.
Yep.
Or if it's not working and I need to add something else to make that goal more achievable, I can add something else. But so that kind of flexibility has really, really helped me out.
Yeah. I didn't ever think it was an option. Most of my list making was in the Army or in my AP classes and there's not that type of structure does not usually leave space for the variability that's needed in an actual life.
Right. We do all have to be flexible.
That is the theory. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I like written. I know you said you like Excels. I have to write everything out by hand, but I like to keep a master list written out on a computer to like refer back to if I get lost in the weeds writing everything down.
My problem with handwriting is that I have the world's slowest handwriting. Like I can type way faster than I can write.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a perfectionist, so like if I spell something, I'm gonna see it. If I spell it wrong, I gotta go back and fix it. And if I'm typing it, I can count on spell check and then just go back and do a reread and fix those later versus if it's in pen or pencil, can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's why I like a lot of my spreadsheets might have like full on sentences in them.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So some of them may be fully written out, but it's just typed. The other reason that I prefer some kind of typed is that I'm all about plans that I can access on more than one device.
Mm.
So if I have a journal paper and I
Mhm.
have to haul that journal home to the training center, out to wherever I'm doing my training that day, whatever, that's too much for me. But if it's electronic and I can see it on my laptop, on my phone, on my tablet. That being said, I do have right now, I have this giant erase board in my office that was already there when I moved in. And I usually have little fun mnemonics and things that I want to remember on it.
Mm.
But right now, for the month of January, because I was so scatterbrained with, new puppy in the home and slipping and falling end of December, being sick early January, I have 3 very, very short and not really perfect plan line items. But so I have one for Azul, I have one for Bell, and then I have one for the training center. And then each one has 2 to 3 things. And so my list of Azul, Bell, and training center go down the left-hand column. Across the top, I have my 3 most important things to me: feeling safe, creating calm, and meeting needs.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
So then each one of those has probably 2 or 3 action items for the month to make sure all of those are feeling safe, creating calm, and meeting needs.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And I have to tell you, my strongest one, the one that's been the hardest for me, is meeting Azul's needs.
Mm.
And Cindy, I kind of know why your hand is up. That was what I was going to jump to next, and saying that, if we can, I know we all are a little bit different there. So, Cindy, if you want to go ahead and just talk about your favorite types of plans, of documenting plans.
Okay, so I have what I've done, and I'm still having issues because we just started this, so I'm still trying to get people to buy into this, is I've actually set it up on Google Sheets and share the document, a weekly document with each of my students on what we're working with. And then, so they have a set training plan, and I want them to put comments in on a daily basis, or, whatever they can do, of what they're doing, where it's working, where it's not working, to give me feedback so I can look at the plan and adjust it accordingly. And then for my own dog, for Nick, what I have done is similar to Penny. I don't have a training center. I just have my apartment. And so what I do with Nick is I have a list on a whiteboard of what tasks we're working on. And so right now our goal is to get our CD this year. And we had a disastrous first attempt at any kind of obedience. last July. And so we're fixing a lot of those particular issues. He's a very hyperdrive dog, and he has a very strong chase behavior. So top priority is fixing his recall and making it as bomb proof as you can possibly make it. So we're recalling to cheese 10 times a day is the goal. The reality is not going to be a daily recall thing, but it's pretty close. And there's been massive improvements in his recall. But there's other things we're working on to do force-free obedience. And so I've got a list on a whiteboard of every single piece that we're working on. And then I update that. And I don't necessarily work on each item every day, but I work on most of them most days, which is the goal. Because I mean, the goal is to say every day, but the reality is most days. And, like last night, he wasn't feeling it for a couple items after he'd had a really, really great session at Lowe's. So it's adjusting it, but it's also, it's there so that it's on the board so that when I'm at home, I can just go to the whiteboard and look at the whiteboard. Okay, yeah, did that, check that off. When I'm out, it's on the spreadsheet so I can go through, and I don't document in the moment when I'm in public, just because I'm usually wanting to get through things, or I've got somebody else with me. And so in public, I can refer back to my phone with the spreadsheet on the phone. And then not only do I have access to Nick's training plan, which I can access during a class or outside of a class, I also have access to all of my students' training plans. And that way it helps me stay more organized, so we're not just going hit and miss with what we're working on, because I get scatterbrained and forget, oh yeah, we need to really work on this behavior with this dog because that's what's needed. So I can go back and look and say, okay, so how are we doing? Let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And there's it's service dog training. There's a lot of task-based training that goes on. There's a lot of concept-based training that goes on also, but there's a lot of very specific things that service dogs have to learn. So
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting. Just curious, how do you find that you can accommodate folks that are more audio processing than visual processing? Because like, I love that idea, but the idea of looking at an Excel sheet and having to refer to it that often makes me want to cry. So like my stuff mostly has to be audio.
So I can talk to them through it. We can talk about it. And I've actually talked to, so one of my students is a 16 or 17-year-old, I forgot how old he is, that has been homeschooled. And so his mom has actually printed out the spreadsheet for him. And I said, well, one of the reasons I like the idea of being able to see back what you're doing. It's not because that way we have a record in a neutral, it's in the cloud somewhere. If it's ever needed for legal reasons, which I hope to God it's never needed for legal reasons, but if it's ever needed for legal reasons, it's there. Yeah. It's documented, it's done. And if they can't do it, if they're not able to do it, I will help them fill it out. I've told them, if you cannot fill it out, check it off. Just put a mark in there somehow that you've acknowledged that you've done it, and then we can assess it, and then I can go back, because I also will go back and make comments in the spreadsheet so that there's some documentation in there, what we're doing, where we're at with it. So it's not 100% that they're required to do it. It's for their benefit to do it. And it's for my benefit, because that way I can see what's going on. And then I create a new sheet weekly, and I keep a copy of whatever their training template is as a separate template, so that if something happens, like, oops, I accidentally erased my whole week's training log, we don't have to go back and reinvent the wheel.
Gotcha. So it's more like a tracking log.
It's more like a tracking, yeah. But it also, if you're working on a specific behavior, you can put, I put in the behavior, I put in the criteria, and then they have spaces to fill in for the week. And if they can, if the dog is exceeding behavior, then is well past what we expect them to be doing, then we can go through and readjust those behaviors.
Gotcha.
Ashlyn has said that she likes doing lists and spreadsheets as well, but she struggles with finding layouts that she can effectively use and keep updated, which is totally where I am with the plans of when Azul was a puppy versus Belle being a puppy, is that just being able to go in and update it. Which is why I did the spreadsheet, or not the spreadsheet, but the whiteboard this month, because the way I worked my schedule, knowing that I had a puppy, is I would have a client for an hour and then I would have at least an hour off before I had another client, which gave me time to meet my dog's needs, meet my needs, and work on what we're training on. Is one of them not feeling safe for some reason? Is there something that we can have specifically? And like Belle's is, she's still young, where she always feels safe pretty much. And so it's all the socialization to new things in the environment, things changing in the environment. And for Azul's, it was feeling safe with Belle. And like he does really well with smaller dogs. He always has. But Belle's probably the smallest large breed puppy I've ever seen. Like, she really is. She's actually 20 pounds now. But at 3.5 months old. So, I mean, she's a decent weight. She just grew a ton. But so when she came home at 8 weeks, Azul was afraid to go near her for fear that he was going to hurt her.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't necessarily afraid of her, but he didn't want to go anywhere near her. And the last puppy we had in our house for a couple of weeks was an exceptionally mouthy puppy. And she'd get overexcited by Azul. And then so she was directing that mouthiness to him. And he was afraid Belle was going to be the same way, which she's not. She was a little mouthy when she came, but it didn't last long.
Mm.
And Azul never had to even correct her for it, which now, like when the Zoom first started, I don't know if you guys heard a very low grumble, but he was laying on his bed like he normally does during Zoom. And she went up and she started nibbling on the hair between his feet, between his paw pads. And so he can put his lip up just slightly and barely even hearable, this very low grumble. And she's like, got it. Not doing that now. Okay.
Yeah. Love a dog that listens.
Yeah. Which is really, really nice. The last puppy did not do that. And Azul would feel the need to escalate, which of course I don't want to happen.
Right.
But, so that whole thing, but so helping him feel safe around her. And we actually, like, I have a lot of dogs coming and going a lot, and some that I've been working with so many months that I picked a few to play with Belle at a very early age. One of them being Azul's best friend, Maverick, that everybody in my group knows. So that was the first dog that Belle played with, and Azul watched Maverick play with her and have her not get hurt. And then he watched a few other dogs, and he's played with Roz, the dog that I fostered for a while, and like kind of his sister, one of his favorite people to play with. And then he's also watched Finn, which is my son's dog that Azul doesn't like because he's an obnoxious adolescent. So he's watched Finn play with Belle safely. So I've been trying really, really hard to make Azul feel safe in the fact that Belle is okay with what she's doing and I've got it and he doesn't need to protect her.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's been a few accidents where they were running and he accidentally stepped on her or something and felt really bad. But other than that, like, they are leaps and bounds enjoying each other after a month of cohabitating. So, but that was why I wanted the whiteboard this month, was simply because if I only have an hour to make sure needs are met and make sure everybody's cared for, I need to be able to run through it quickly. And that's why there's just a couple of bullet points and it's not perfect. And it's just, what have I done for socialization for Belle today? She usually eats her lunch during one of those training sessions versus in the bowl. And it's just like, all right, so that's a socialization opportunity. We got to change something up. Do I have time to sit there and do it? Or am I going to prepare an enrichment toy that increases her sense of touch to something?
Right.
So she's making an appearance.
Hello.
And I know Michael has joined us too. Michael, we are talking about our favorite types of formats for plans and spreadsheets and dry erase boards and stuff. So if you'd like to type that into the chat, you're welcome to. Shall we move on a little bit to kind of like, I know you touched briefly on good day, bad day plans in your overall. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, Renee, and kind of what you mean by that and how you figure out what you're going to put on which plan?
Yeah, so I first started with realizing that Texas weather is not what I had anticipated. So like I needed to come up with a plan for the days that it's 110 degrees. My dogs can't go outside. And their enrichment is usually just throwing food out in the yard, and that's not going to work when they're going to cook. So I had to first come up with different plans for the different weather. And what I found is when I made those plans, I did not factor in my disability. I did not factor in that I'm not a workhorse that can go a million miles an hour and do every single thing that I think I should be able to do. So I had to make adjustments for low spoon days. So on those days when I wake up and I know I've got a bunch of admin tasks to do, I'm going to be on the phone a bunch, great. Then that means the dog plans are all going to be hands off. It's going to be individual thinking activities for them. On the days when I am doing less admin work, more engaging with people, it's really helpful for me to engage with my dog because it helps me ground me. So like balancing out based on what's happening in the day. And I also have to work around my kids. So my daughter has autism. So on her bad days, when she's way overstimulated, we have to have a different plan for keeping the dogs locked up than on other days. You don't want to leave dogs locked up all the time. So like you have to have a plan for inevitably when those days are not good. And what is functional. What I found the best way to do is to boil it down to what is reinforcing. So what do I actually like doing with my dogs? And then on a low spoons day, that's the only important thing. Because if it's reinforcing for me, I will be willing to do it. And if it's meeting a dog's need, then they will also be willing to do it. And those two together make a bad day plan. If that makes sense.
That does. And I really like that, you know. I didn't incorporate that in when I was planning with Azul originally, and I had things. So my bigger plan with Azul was outlined where there was a weekly. I had kind of a general overall like 3-month plan of things that I wanted to accomplish, but then I had different sheets, different tabs in my spreadsheet for each week. And then I could just fill in, I spent, 10 minutes doing this, or 1 minute doing this, 2 minutes doing that. And I didn't worry about what I hit, if hitting them all in one day. And that made it really easier for me to think long-term plan, because I could look at the end of the week, I could review and say, all right, what did I only touch on a little bit that I need to make sure I do more of next week versus what's going really, really well. And maybe I don't need to focus on that so much next week.
Yeah.
And that really helped me as well, as far as that good day, bad day planning, is just knowing that, all right, what else is happening this week? Is it a week full of doctor's appointments? Then I know I'm going to get to practice certain things at those doctor's appointments.
Right.
And I'm not going to focus on those on any other day.
Right.
So just, kind of looking at stuff like that too really helped me. So in a way, I had the good day, bad day kind of plan happening. It just thought out as like, as far, it was happening naturally, I guess, and versus like having two different plans of attack.
Yeah. And I've changed it throughout time because, like I said, variability is my favorite and my new best friend. But the current system that I use is I make a plan for good days, and then I have like a menu option for bad days. It's like, it's a bad day. I'm scrapping this whole list. I'm not even going to look at my list. Here's the bare minimum. Here is the minimum viable product for the day. This is all I need to do, even on a bad day. And that has helped a lot relieve the impending stress, doom of I failed, I didn't get enough done today, that overwhelming feeling. It's definitely helped to have just like a side sheet to physically put everything else away and only look at, okay, it's a bad day and that's fine. Doesn't mean I failed.
Did you, when you were creating your bad day list of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
did you think to add in some things that just make you happy?
I tried
Like
to.
they serve a little purpose, but the main purpose is they just make you feel good, or at least make one of your dogs feel extra good, or
Yeah,
put a
yeah, yeah.
smile on your face in some way.
Yeah, I like watching my dogs search for stuff. So their enrichment is almost all search based. Almost all of it, because that is enjoyable for me. I can sit back. I'm like, they're doing the thing. When they look at me, I can say, yeah, you're doing great. You're still looking at the environment. Well done. They go back to doing it. It's building confidence. I really enjoy the hands-off stuff, especially for like high pain days. So I found that to be the least likely to
No.
cause issues, you know? Um, so yeah, that's the good day, bad day section. And then when I'm looking at long-term versus short-term with a good day, bad day plan, um, they're kind of two separate things. I keep them in a, I'm a huge fan of compartmentalization, keeping everything in a little box. So the daily stuff is in its own box, the weekly stuff, like zooming out and zooming in. So I like the idea that you were talking about with the short-term and long-term goal being over here, and you reassess after a week, or you reassess after you've been through some time. So I think it's important that the bad day list is reassessed to make sure you're still meeting what is reinforcing for the human, what is meeting your dog's needs, and what is actually sustainable. Like for enrichment, the 3 rules I have is it must be free, cheap, and easy.
Yes.
If
I
it's not
like
for
that.
free, don't start
Mine
it.
is maybe not all cheap, but I try to keep it as cheap as possible. Where it gets hard for me as far as keeping it cheap wise is I have a very picky food eater.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not that most of his enrichment doesn't involve food, but like, so if we're doing search for stuff, he will search for anything under the sun. He loves the variety of searching for different stuff, but he won't search for food very often anymore.
Mm.
Whatever I want to use as a reward becomes the expensive part of the search. Because it has to be something amazing for him.
Mm.
But one of our previous guests, and I try to really apply this to everything that I do, but it's especially important on those bad days for me, is so she always said, create a list of 3 to 5 things that you absolutely love to do, and then create a list of 3 to 5 things that your dog loves to do. And then of those 2 lists, look for something, at least one, if not 2 things that are in common. Like you said, watching your dog search for food makes you happy. They love it, you love it. Boom, that's it.
Right.
So that when you find that overlap, that becomes added to your bad day plan, at least for me. So
Yep.
if else fails and I get nothing else, I have at least that one action item that I can do really quickly, which is why I tell all my clients, like I'm a big advocate of, especially with puppies, but dogs of any age, doing a snuffle box for their meal versus a bowl. Generic cardboard box. I don't care what items you put inside. I have suggestions for, new to, and suggestions for been doing it a while.
Yeah.
And I know Cindy uses her dog's toy box
Mm-hmm.
for her snuffle box. And so I mean, there's a lot of different things there. But so I always suggest clients prepare that snuffle box ahead of time, everything but the kibble, have it all ready. It's up on a shelf, it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And all of a sudden you have a bad day or even a bad hour. It doesn't have to be a day, a
Mm-hmm.
bad few minutes, and you need to do something great for your dog right now. You pull it out, add your kibble, and voila, it's there and ready to go.
Yep.
Could be a hot weather day or could be a pain day. It doesn't matter. It's easy, but keep one on hand.
Yes. Yes.
So a couple of things
Especially
like
with
that.
some humans that, I don't know, some humans live by themselves and some humans live with others. So like for me on a bad day, I also needed to pick something to do with my kids and something my kids can do with my dogs. Otherwise, I was going to spend all of my spoons telling my kids to leave the dogs alone because they weren't getting their needs met. So I was extra cautious. So like finding separating out another level of, okay, my kids also want to engage with the dogs. What can they do? Cool. They can stand up on the tables next to me and throw food. And now everybody's getting all of their needs met at the same time. And everybody's safe. We're all searching, we're looking for stuff, and the kids are getting the dogs to do stuff. So thinking about it that way was really helpful too.
Yep, I did that same thing with my grandson. Like I said, my son lives with my daughter, and it's actually her son, but the obnoxious adolescent dog that Azul doesn't like, Finn, is my son's dog. So they're in the same household. And Finn was a very, very mouthy puppy. And like my daughter thought it was cute. So it lasted a lot longer than it should have. But so my grandson was actually afraid of Finn mouthing him. And so that's exactly one of the things I taught him how to play kind of a ping pong game where he could be in a safe place, whether that be sitting on the couch, standing on a chair at the table, wherever was safe for him. And he would toss even just one piece of food out. Finn would go chase it, come back, sit, wait for the next one. He could toss another one. And that just, from there, we were able to build in, as I got Finn some taking the treat nicely from a hand, we were then able to transition that game into the same game, but actually taking it from my grandson's hand. And it helped everybody's fears. And now Finn is not a mouthy dog, so it was a training plan. And I mean, because it's a good thing Finn isn't mouthy. Now he's 18, 20 months old, German Shepherd, 70+ pound boy. It's a good thing he's no longer
yourself, buddy.
Right.
That makes sense. Interesting. I
So
love how things work.
that's kind of like one of the things that I love about planning and why I like to work through planning with my clients is that and I hate bragging, so it's going to sound like a brag, but one of the things that I am really good at is finding the unusual solution to the challenge, to the problem. And so if I'm working through a client in a plan, and one of my favorites is my challenging behaviors planning that some of the canine coaches have worked through with me with clients in some group Zooms. But so working through that and taking that challenging behavior and finding creative solutions that, like you said, meet everybody's needs and things that they can do on the good days and things that they can do on the bad days. So that has really, really helped me. Does anybody else want to share some things that have helped them with, the difference between good day, bad day plans? Cindy has her hand up.
So one of the things, oops, mine is doing strange things. My computer, come on, okay, there. So I had a period that was close to a year where it was almost impossible for me to walk due to back pain. I had really, really bad sciatica, and trying to get the dog out to go to the bathroom was a challenge. So training was extremely limited. We were doing pretty much what we were doing in class only. Fortunately, having a poodle, he's an extremely smart dog, and he was able to work through and get his rally intermediate title through all of that. However, he's lacking a lot of foundations that I think he needs for other parts to go further at this point in time. So we're fixing that. But what I found was I had to go and look and adapt a lot of different games and activities so that I could do them either sitting down or laying down. We got really good at playing what I call squirrel, which is where he wants to chase his squirrel. He wants to play fetch. And so I interspersed that with asking for positions. And he gets a kick out of that. It really helps his hyperdrive when we do that. We also use a flirt pole in the house, which is going to sound, this is something, okay, so I live in Central California and in the Central Valley, where we also get 110 degrees for June, July, and August, and 90 to 100 in May and September. So I am very heat intolerant. So we have learned to play flirt pole in the house. I have a 1-bedroom apartment. I don't have a huge living room, but I have figured out a way for him to get that chase need met, because he actually prefers to chase the flirt pole. So I took a dressage whip and I tied a snake toy to the end of it, and that's his favorite chaser right now. And then I interrupt the chase by having him do behaviors, which helps him learn to think in arousal when he's just super, super excited. And that is super rewarding. And then adding to that, we ended up throwing, and I can do that either sitting or standing. He gets more exercise and he has more fun when I'm standing. But then adding to that, from what I've learned with predation substitution training with him, is I got a prey dummy and I fill that with treats, and he's not so much into and this really helped me figure out where his problem with his prey drive is. He lives to chase that chaser, but he is not so much into the prey dummy. He's not a foodie like Azul. He's not a foodie. And so I do put high value stuff in there, but he does get it, and he tends to hang on to it and like, ooh, I've got to wait until you're settled before I get to eat it. But that's one of that, and the snuffle box or noise box are things that I also do for him for enrichment, and that have been really, really helpful. And the nice thing about doing either throwing the toy or doing the chaser is that he gets interrupted to do cues. And so it's low energy for me. It's super rewarding for him. And it's made his sit that much stronger. We're working on a different style down. So that's getting stronger. His pretty is getting stronger, which I like pretty for core training. So, it's finding ways that are going to engage him that take very little energy for me, because I have days when I just flat out, my brain shuts down and I literally cannot do anything. I can't even change the channel on the TV. So having plans for days to prevent it or to limit it, to use to do the activities that don't require as much of me is really, really helpful. And now I've done some things that have changed, so my back is doing better. And so I am able to get up and help him, but I still have days where my brain shuts down. And the nice thing is, with the tasks Nick's trained to do, when I start really having a bad brain day, those tasks just start becoming automatic. And because they're all highly rewarded and they're highly reinforced and highly, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't hear you.
They're self-reinforcing.
They're self-reinforcing. A lot of them are self-reinforcing, but it's not just that. There's just the fluency of it is so strong that he's like, okay, yeah, this is when I know you need me. Like, I was having a bad day. I didn't realize I was having a bad day. It was getting late, and the bedroom door has to be closed every night because for management issues. And I'm sitting on the bed. All of a sudden, the bedroom door gets closed, and he comes over and starts pulling my socks off. And I don't ask him specifically to do that every day, but knowing that he knows that when I'm having a bad day, that there's something he can do to help, it's reinforcing to me, it's reinforcing to him. And it shows me, yes, okay, he really is a trainer. When I'm feeling like I'm having a good day and I'm like, why do I need a service dog? It's like, okay, this is a day I know I need a service dog.
Exactly. I have definitely been there.
Yeah, and if worse comes to worse, if I can't have him do anything else, I'll have him start retrieving things, because that and finding the phone are the super highly reinforced, especially when he has to find the phone, because he gets cheese every time he finds the phone. Because I want that, because I lose the phone all the time, and I want him to really have a high value for that phone. So recalls and phone finding get cheese and not much else. But he does, also am a firm believer in paying my dog. I don't start skimping out on paying just because he's trained. But, you know, that's just me.
Nope, I agree with that one. Shall we move on a little bit? One of the last things that I had wanted to address today is just kind of talking about some common behaviors. And I think that that's important when we look at planning because, I mean, that's basically what our plan is, right? Is so that we can get our dogs. I mean, yes, we want to make sure they're happy and make sure their needs are met, but we also want to make sure that they're able to help us with, especially in the service dog world, in meeting our needs, just like Cindy was talking about. So one of the biggest questions that I see time and time again in service dog communities is, what are the first few things that you train your puppy to do? And I thought that was really important when it comes into planning because, you know, that seems to be the challenge of when people are creating the plan is, all right, what is most important? And that also applies to those good days, bad days, as far as, you know, what is absolutely critical that we accomplish. And so, and I know a huge one for a lot of people, and we've discussed this before, is the auto sit. You stop walking, if a dog's in heel, they automatically sit. And not only do I not train that, but sit in general is a low priority to me. I do train sit on cue, but it's a low priority. And is it the first thing I train? Yeah, because it's super easy to train. And I'm doing that while I'm getting the dog used to paying attention to the other things that are more important, like the eye contact and paying attention to what my hands do. So, I mean, those are my top two things that I want to teach a puppy. I want them to feel safe and comfortable looking at my eyes regularly. Not that I'm having them do that in a heel. Not long term anyways, you know, they'll check in, um but so I mean those are my two most important things for puppies for me, is that they feel safe, calm, and comfortable looking at my eyes, and they look to me when they don't know what to do. So look at my eyes, look at my hands, what am I doing? Which is important for my disability being migraines and balance issues. A lot of time that shows in my eyes. So it's super important for, you know, the later alerting is that my dogs pay hyper attention to my hands and my eyes. Anybody else, what is their, you know, top 1, 2, maybe 3 behaviors that they think are most important when they bring a new puppy or a new dog of any age into their home? Go ahead, Renee.
I don't really do a lot of puppies in my home. Everybody who does puppies, I give you major kudos. You're very brave humans. Good for you. But I always think that the couple of most important things to teach, it's kind of the opposite. I want a dog that can look at the environment and disengage. Not necessarily look at me, but because I end up with a lot of bully breeds, I want those guys to be able to say, I saw a thing and I did nothing. The ability to just do that with the environment is skill number 1 for most of them to need. And then after that, for me physically to feel safe, because I'm not a very large person and I like large dogs, is a settle on command. So when I tell you it's time to stop, I need a dog that will be gentle and stop. Those are the first 2 things. We can work through everything else. We can make everything else pretty later. If you can look at the environment and disengage, and you can settle down when I tell you to, so you don't overwhelm me. Those are my first 2.
And those two really kind of go hand in hand, don't they? Because you can't do one without the other.
Right.
Kind of like, I mean, that's where my eye contact and focusing on my hands. I use a lot of hand targets too.
Mm-hmm.
But I use those skills to be able to teach the settle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a lot of the same thing, just slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just it. It does depend on the age of when you're getting the dog as to what's going to be first a lot of times. I mean, there's some similarities, and you know, we all know that that first month you have a dog of any age, it's all just adapting to the new routine for everybody, because not only is it a new routine for that new dog, it's a new routine for all the other animals in the house, including all the humans. And that adaptation period is critical. Just getting everybody to be able to flow together. Whether even if you're doing the gated community still, you still have that routine of flow. But so that one is super important. Does anybody else have anything that is their favorite? Oh, and Ashlyn does say like her favorites are nose touch, which is I do that one a lot too. That's usually my next one. Gentle and down. So those are super picky or super important to me. So good things to add to your training plan. Go ahead, Cindy.
I like them to engage with me. Now, I will teach an auto sit and a heel and attention looking up at me. I don't teach it to my service dog clients necessarily unless they're doing something like Nick is learning it finally, because we're finally taking the time to do it. And because he needs it for his extracurricular activities. And I'm a firm believer in if your dog enjoys doing extracurricular activities, and they should enjoy training to do it. And so I have my reasons for wanting to get him a CD. It's my ego thing more than anything, but he's enjoying the training because he gets all this special one-on-one attention. But one of my biggest things that I like to teach to any young dog, especially a service dog, is a retrieve. And if for no other reason, when you have a puppy, they need to be able to give you stuff that they're not supposed to have, regardless of how high value it is. And rather than chasing around the dog and having all these other issues with them chewing things up, I want them to automatically bring me things that they may or may not need to have. And I used that yesterday in a sort of a semi-enrichment thing. I had some hog's hoofs laying around, and Nick was chewing on one, and I heard him chewing, and I couldn't see what he was chewing, and I was pretty sure it was something he was supposed to be chewing as opposed to something he's not supposed to be chewing. But I wanted to make sure he didn't have a remote or something like that because it was still making that crunching noise. So I asked him to bring it to me, and I told him, and even though he knows this, and he doesn't necessarily, I think he understands more English than I think he does, but I still told him, you'll probably get it back, just bring it over. So he comes walking over to me, and he's got a hoof in his mouth. That's fine. You're supposed to have that. That was your Christmas present. You're supposed to have it. Here you go. Have it back. I just wanted to know what it was. But he's done the same thing when he's taken the remote. He will bring me the remote. Yesterday, he wanted something, and he wanted me to engage with him on some level. So he kept retrieving multiple items that were mine, that he knew or that were associated with me. He was bringing me the remote. He brought me glasses. He brought me a clicker. And that's usually a good indication that I need to get up and start playing his games on so we got up and we did some training. We're working on learning drafting. So we worked on getting into the shafts for the cart and putting the harness on. Not something that he has a hard time with, but it's like, oh wow, free cookies. So I like to teach them to bring me things so that they can communicate with me. He can't say, hey, I need you to engage with me the same way that a kid could. Mommy, 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 let me pull your pants till you pay attention to me, or something of that nature. It gives him a communication skill. Plus, I don't care what your disability is. There's probably a reason why you need a retrieve on your service dog. If it's nothing else other than to find, if you can't see and you drop your leash, having your dog hand you the leash is huge, or a credit card, or whatever it is you drop. Or Nick found $150 at the pet store one day. So it's important to me. I think it's important to start that foundation of that retrieve at a young age, because the earlier you teach it, the easier it is to have the dog more engaged in it.
Belle found me $50 on our New Year's Eve trip down to Illinois.
That's pretty cool.
she had to potty. I could tell. I was sitting in the back seat while my husband was driving, so I was in the back with the dogs. And I knew she had to potty, so we pulled off on an unexpected stop. She jumped out with her to go potty while my husband drove around to the front of the building so that he could use the restroom. And we're just walking along, and there was trash everywhere. And sure enough, there laid a $50 bill that had been outside a very long time, but it's
Mhm.
still spent well.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah,
There's-
we worked on trade right away too. The retrieve for trade.
Right.
It's a good
Yeah,
one.
it's just one of those skills, I think, and it's useful for pet dogs as well as for service dogs, because if you have a dog that chews, you can trade for something that's appropriate for them to chew. Or, and then as a service dog, you can get it so that, hey, guess what? Now you can bring this to me, and you'll get something even better. Like, you give me the phone, I'll give you cheese.
So kind of to wrap it up, because I know we are at 2:00. So one of the reasons I wanted to include that little bit about our top behaviors is because one of the biggest things that my clients struggle with tends to be figuring out what it is they want their dog to do. And Ashlyn agrees that retrieve is useful, and the gentle and nose touch are steps for that as well. Yep. But so we know we don't want our dog barking nonstop at other dogs walking down the street. We know we don't want them jumping on our guests. We know we know all these things we don't want our dog to do. That's easy. But figuring out what we want our dog to do tends to be a lot more challenging, which is actually going to be our discussion topic for February. So I thought it was going to be kind of a good intermediary there to look at when you're creating your plan. Really think about what is most important for you. Like Renee, you had that little bit of, you knew you needed your dogs to be able to settle if you asked them to, because you knew that's what you needed for your sanity. And so we all have some things that we know are going to be most important to us. And so if you can at least start there, even if you're not creating this is everything I want to train to my dog this month, if you can't do the whole elaborate of, well, this is the plan, this is my long-term goal, this is what I want him to have in the 2 years, starting with a puppy like I have now, this is my long-term goals. Look at that, creating that short list of 3 to 5 behaviors that you know you need. And then when you have that behavior, look for 1 or 2 little components to that behavior that you can add now. So if retrieve is one of your ends, end goals, what can you do to start the retrieve? I rely heavily on nose targets. So I start that early on when I'm teaching the dog to look at my hands, usually with hand targets and hand signals. So if you can figure out what's most important to you and then break down even just a couple of things and to create a training plan around those couple of things, doesn't have to be perfect. As most of us have said, flexibility is key. Yeah. Michael likes to start off with settle and to start a retrieve and nose touch for targeting as well. I think those are going to probably be the most common in the service dog world. Even for many, many pets, like my pets all get that same training too, which is why I haven't really focused a whole lot on training plans with Belle as much as I did with Azul. With Azul, I was still a little bit newer. Like, I had high service dog goals. With Belle, have my goals changed? Do I have high service dog standards? No. But I also know I have a long time to reach that. I'm not trying to rush her. I'm trying to actually slow myself down and slow her down. And so it's just, what do I need her to be successful day to day right now? And that's kind of my end one. And with that, Renee, I'll let you finish us off.
Oh dear. Okay, I was gonna pass it back to you. I was just gonna say,
Go ahead.
When you're thinking about in behavior work, when I'm dealing with people that are like overwhelmed with their dog's behavior, the first thing I like to have them focus on is teaching their dog to be a tattletale. If you can make your dog into a tattletale, you can pretty much do anything else you need to after that. Just become relevant and part of the loop. And you're good to go from there.
I loved that. Azul actually did that on his own with our foster dog. So she had a very bad counter surfing habit, and if she wasn't being interacted with, like when she first came to me, she thought she needed to be interacted with 24/7. And so she couldn't do alone time. And like I have an office at the training center, then my dogs spend time in the office if I'm with a client and they're not out there helping me with that client. And she could not handle it. So she would chew on things and get into the trash and whatever. And Azul, who is very non-vocal, 99.9% of the time, which is odd for a husky, but very, very non-vocal, learned the cutest little just a poof. And that always meant, you want to come see what this girl's doing. And it worked really, really well. And so, I mean, he learned that. He hasn't had to do that to Belle yet, but I have no doubt he will pick that up. So, yes, if your dog can be the tattletale, it's one of the things our first service dog kind of learned naturally, not necessarily for other household members per se, but we have a food prep counter in our house. My husband loves that to be incredibly clean, nothing sat on ever. My son is infamous for leaving his empty cup there or leaving an empty 2-liter bottle there for me to put away, whatever. And when we come home, from the grocery store, groceries get sat there and then get put away. Well, she became the tattletale of that counter. If anything sat on that counter too long, she would complain, which, I mean, at that point in my life, I really struggled with movement of anything. Like just even moving in general. Getting out of my chair was hard. Once I was up, I was okay. But, just getting, I was in that state where you just don't want to do anything. And so she would make me get up to deal with something on the counter, because it wasn't supposed to be there. It was not in the right place. Get up and put it away. And that one thing, like, it was amazing for keeping my house clean. Half the time it was my stuff because, when I'm in that mood, I just don't care that there's something sitting on the counter. So she became that kind of tattletale of, you said you were going to do this. You need to get up and do something. You got to do something on your list. Get up and move. Which made it really, really great to teach her escalated alerts when she was at that point and needing to learn to pester me severely. So, yes, lots of different things for plans, lots of different things you can do. I do have at least the 2 different templates on my website, the socialization checklist, and then my day-to-day plan that allows you to, fill in your times, your tracking sheet for the week are both on my website. Renee, do you have any free resources like that? I know that's not something we discuss. So if you don't, that's totally okay.
I've got a Facebook group. Yeah, I've got a Facebook group. It's called The Human End of the Leash. I've got hours of behavior information videos and breed group conversations and management, and come join the group. There's lots of stuff in there.
Yes. Yes, I did just recently join that group too, so I was really enjoying that one. But yes, when it comes to podcasts, social groups, whatever, the only groups I ever usually really like are my own. Most of them I hate, but that one I like. Krisha Stewart has one I really like too. But there's a few there, and I'm not, I think we all need to support each other. The more we can do to give shout outs to other people and other groups, and where we see the kindness spreading. Yeah, anybody who knows me knows that's a big one for me. Kindness to our dogs, kindness to the people we interact with, and anywhere I see that spreading is where I'm going to send my clients to. So we thank you for joining us. We hope those of you catching the replay afterwards learn a little bit about plans. Feel free to check out uberpaws.com for my spreadsheets. I also do a low cost planning Zoom based session with people that offers just a way to help get the plans out of your head into a spreadsheet that you can use that's open for everybody. This was not a selling chat. That's not the thing behind it. It's just something I love to do. So gotta let people know I'm available to help. I know Cindy's available to help. Ashlyn's available to help. And I'm sure Renee's available through her group as well. So you can join that one. And so if you do have any questions or can't reach anything, the uberpaws.com works great, or email to Crazy2Calm Canine Coaches at gmail.com. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It was a great time. I had a good time. Thanks.